it's interesting because whether we would necessarily connect with this or not, we judge people by appearances. We immediately begin to grade someone on their education, their background. Do we click with them? How successful are they? How wealthy are they? And so on and so forth. And we begin to, whether we recognize it or not, show preferential treatment. And we have to be very careful about this because this can happen just by default. And what it says of Jesus in his just reign is that he will not do this. And this is super important in our world right now because I'll just go ahead and say this. Racial differences do not make a person guilty or innocent. Wearing a blue uniform and a badge does not make you perfect or evil. As God's people, we have to be totally committed to the truth. We have to just sort of push all of our chips in there, come what may. We want to be people who do not show partiality and do not judge by appearance or what we hear. We want to be people of the truth. And so Jesus is this king of truth. He won't change his mind by someone's bank account. He doesn't look to what others think of him to alter his message or to change it. He looks to God, his Father. He doesn't need our smile, our approval, or our affirmation. Think about for a moment, if you will, when Jesus was on the cross and his enemies surrounded him, mocking him, saying, "You who could save others, you can't even save yourself." I mean, these are custom-designed insults to get right at his very heart. And instead of calling down legions of angels, he stays right there in the pain of that moment, suffocating to death for them, for us, and for the sins of the world. He does not judge by outward appearances. It says, verse 4, "But with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth." And what this means by judging is it means putting things right, making things straight, organizing things rightly. He cares about the poor and the downtrodden and the marginalized and those without power or influence. In fact, what's interesting is if you look at the history of the world, Jesus is the greatest thing that has ever happened for equality, for human dignity, for the elevating of the poor. Right now, we are in a theater that's part of an organization that is devoted and dedicated with a singular objective to care for the poor. And that objective is fundamentally informed by Jesus, who loved and cared for the poor. And I want you to know how altogether unique this is. When Christian missionaries first came to India and were exposed to the caste system, they were horrified that there would be the lowest caste, the untouchables, were marginalized, were literally untouchable, could only come out at night. If you want the pathway to human dignity and to equality and to value, you find it in Jesus and in Jesus alone. Every other worldview and philosophy and religion is grading people on a sliding scale. And it is only in Christ that we see both the image of God given to everyone, regardless of ability or disability, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity. Every single human being is valuable and is worthy. And we see this in Jesus Christ. And so, what's interesting is that he gets the results of the king, but he doesn't use the methods of a king. Look what it says next. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Think for a moment with me when Jesus was in the garden. Judas comes and betrays him. A mob swarms around Jesus with, you can just imagine, the torches and pitchforks and the desire for violence. And Peter takes out his sword and goes to town. And Jesus says, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. If mine was an earthly kingdom, he says to Pilate, then my followers would fight. See, in Jesus' just rule, he reigns through the word of his mouth. Through his truth, his total and complete truth, he vanquishes every enemy. He vanquishes Satan, who would accuse us of condemnation. He vanquishes the world, which would lie to us and mislead us. He vanquishes the flesh, which is so quick to move us away from the Lord. He rules through the word of his mouth